Hi friends, Bruxy here. Welcome to your first highlight reel for the end of religion study sessions. So I'm so glad that we're investing the time to do this. This first session is entitled Go and Learn, and that is based on the response of Jesus to the religious leaders of his day who were trying to figure out the enigma of Jesus. Why are you encouraging us to put our faith in God? Good, but you're also subverting the religious system that didn't God institute in the first place? Boo, what's going on? Jesus says if you're trying to figure him out, here's the key to unlock the mystery. Go and learn what this means. And then he quotes the Old Testament, the Hebrew prophets, where it says, God says, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. I desire the way of love, not the way of religious ritual. Jesus says that somehow there have been clues, a trail of breadcrumbs that's been planted all through the religious history of the Hebrews that is leading up to his time and his place where everything is going to be made more clear. But first we need to understand the context of what's going on here, or we're going to miss something profound that can affect all of humanity. And so we're really just taking Jesus at his word. We're accepting the Jesus challenge. That's what this book and what these sessions are about, saying, okay, Jesus, we're going to trust you on this one. We're going to go and learn. We're going to apply ourselves. It's not just a quick spoon-fed answer that Jesus is offering. He's saying, go and do some study. I believe in you. I trust you're going to uncover some beautiful things. So as we've worked through the first couple of chapters and also some of the intro material to the study guide, I think we're beginning to at least get a taste of some of the gold, some of the treasure that could lie before us in the teaching of Jesus. A number of years ago, after a service at the meeting house at my church, I had a gentleman come up to me. His name is Adam, and Adam went to shake my hand, and when we shook hands, he slipped a $10 bill into my hands, and he said, I want to make a donation to you, Pastor. I always know someone's new at the meeting house when they call me Pastor, and say, I want to make a donation. I need to explain it, though, because it has symbolic value. I thought, whoa, I love symbolism. I like mysteries. I also love $10 bills because in Canada, they're purple, and who doesn't love purple money? Okay, so he says, here's the explanation. First of all, you have to know who I am. I'm not a believer. In fact, I am an atheist, transgender, Wiccan priest. He said, and you need to know this because I'm probably in a demographic that would say I'm one of the last people on the planet who would feel comfortable and welcome in a Christian church. I don't believe, and you'd think I would feel judged, but I don't. And I've been here for a few weeks because a friend told me I should come and check out what you're doing here. And I want to actually give you money as a symbol because I want you to know that I support what you're doing, even though I'm not yet a believer. Of course, he really had my attention. I wanted to know more. And he explained it this way. He said, Bruxy, it seems as though I figured out what you're doing. I'm on to you. It seems as though here you're helping people who claim to follow Jesus actually follow Jesus. He says, I think what you're doing is you're helping people who call themselves Christians actually learn how to be more like Christ. And I said, busted, you're on to us. That's exactly what we're trying to do here. It's called discipleship, and we're helping people be apprentices of Jesus, especially those people who would claim to be Christians, and we're also inviting other people to come and join us on the journey. And he said, well, that's great. He said, I'm not a believer, but I have become convinced that if more people on the planet who claim to be Christians, and he said, and by the way, in our culture, they're everywhere. So if more of those people who call themselves Christians actually act like Jesus, this world would be a better place for people like me. It would be a better place for everyone, Christians and non-Christians. And I think he's right. I think that as more of us who claim to follow Jesus actually become like Jesus, that's a gift we give to the planet. It affects our relationships with creation care, with other people, both friends and enemies, as we learn how to love them better. It affects our relationship with ourself and our divided psyches and our confusion. It affects our relationship vertically with God. I think we become a better version of ourselves as we become more apprenticed, mentored by the person of Jesus. Adam was onto something there. And so I have Christian and non-Christian friends who would say, this is a project I want more Christians to invest in, but also non-Christians to say, I'm looking for a focal point to orient my life around, to help me in my spiritual journey. There's nobody like Jesus. Let me explain more about that. What Jesus offers the world is a fascinating approach to faith that we don't find anywhere else. It is a bidirectional spirituality. By that I mean, Jesus teaches us how to reach in two directions at the same time spiritually, both up but also out, to learn how to love God and love our neighbor as ourselves. When Jesus is asked by religious leaders, what's the greatest commandment in the Torah, in the Hebrew Scriptures? What's the one greatest commandment? He says, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. But he doesn't stop there. He says, and the second one is like it, and that's love your neighbor as you love yourself. You could call that tridirectional. Love God, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so Jesus is helping reorient their thinking and what it means to love God. Because remember, Jesus was only asked for the top one command. What's the greatest commandment? And he couldn't do it. He had to give them two. And he gave two different commands that are not at the same place. They're not side by side in the Old Testament, in the Torah, in the Hebrew Scriptures. He takes those two commands, love God, love your neighbor as yourself, and he binds them together. He ties them together, says, you dare not separate them. Because you and I know that it is possible to say, I love God so much that you end up hating other people or ignoring other people in your pursuit of some divine experience. There are people who will blow themselves and others up in the name of their love of God. The Christian church has spent years torturing other people, killing other people, and sometimes just ignoring them in the name of the love of Jesus. This is wrong. We'll talk more about that in your reading coming up next week. And so Jesus says, no, we bind love of God with love of neighbor as we love ourselves. In fact, then Jesus goes on. That's almost, you think this is profound, but it's just the beginning. Jesus goes on later with his disciples. After mentoring them for 3 years, he then shifts things slightly. He says in John 13:34, he says, a new command I give you. A new command? Oh, why have you waited till now, Jesus? What is it? Here it is. He says, love one another. Well, you've told us that before. But now Jesus adds, love one another as I have loved you. Now he doesn't say love your neighbor as you love yourself, because some of us don't love ourselves very well, even as a starting point. We don't know how to. So Jesus shifts it slightly and says, I want you to love one another as I have loved you. Now, 3 years into their time with Jesus, every disciple would hear that and have an intimate experience, a memory of a time where they have been really loved by Jesus, really heard by Jesus, challenged in love by Jesus. And he says, now I can tell you, love one another as I have loved you. Do you see what he's done with the vertical dimension of his bidirectional spirituality? Now the vertical dimension is not love God as you love others, but it's receive love from God and then offer that love to others. The vertical dimension has shifted from a giving out to a taking in, a receiving. And then we offer that love to others. Love one another as I have loved you, which we know is the love of God offered to us through Jesus. So, step one, Jesus binds love of God and love of neighbor as we love ourselves. Step two, Jesus says that we receive love from God and then offer that to others. And that should be our spirituality. Learn to focus on how much you are loved and then offer that love to others. But then step three is interesting. Jesus and then the early church will go on to express love of others as the sole direction, assuming that if you love others well, the love relationship between you and God is taking care of itself. And now that's fascinating. Now look at this. The Apostle Paul says in Galatians 5:14, he says, for the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command. What's the one command? Love your neighbor as yourself. He doesn't say the first command. Jesus said, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then adds a second. He goes to the second command and makes the second command the first command. It's just one command. Just love other people, because basically, listen, if you're loving other people well, God is going to receive that as worship. He's going to receive that as love of himself. The Apostle John says this repeatedly in the book of 1 John. One example, 1 John 3:16. This is how we know what love is. Don't you love a verse that starts that way? This is how we know what love is. I want to know what love is. How do we know? Well, this is how you know what love is. Jesus Christ laid his life down for us. Jesus shows us what sacrificial, other-centered love is like. And we ought to lay our lives down for, how would you complete that sentence? Jesus laid his life down for you, and you ought to lay your life down for, well, grammatically, you might expect it to take the flow of tit for tat, give and take, transactional. Jesus laid his life down for you, you should lay your life down for him. I remember hearing it that way in Sunday school, being taught by a teacher, Jesus died for you, Bruxy. The least you can do is live for him. And that would make a kind of sense. Jesus gives his life for us, so we give our lives for Jesus. But the New Testament, the New Covenant emphasis always is receive love from God, and then the way you love God back is by pouring that love outward to others around you. Jesus laid his life down for us, and we ought to lay our lives down for our brothers and sisters, says 1 John 3:16. Here, last verse, Romans 15:7. Romans 15:7, the Apostle Paul puts it this way: accept one another. And that word accept, proslambano is the Greek word. It can mean to embrace or to receive to yourself or to welcome into your space. Accept one another then, just as Christ accepted or embraced or received or welcomed you in order to bring praise to God. Okay, a little bit more about this proslambano word. It's a Greek word. New Testament was originally written in Greek, but I always hear it with a bit of an Italian accent because we have some great huggers at our church at the meeting house, and they happen to be Italian, and they pull me close, and I always think of proslambano because the word means to hug aggressively. I love that. To pull close forcefully. That's this word translated accept or welcome. And so I picture some friends that I have who would be like, hey, Bruxy, get over here. And then boom, they pull me in for the hug. And I think of proslambano. And that's what the Apostle Paul says God does for us. Remember, just as Christ has accepted, embraced, welcomed, proslambanoed you, pulled you close. So allow yourself to be pulled close as you read this book, as you study the scriptures, as you learn about Jesus, as you have conversation with one another. Be aware of God proslambanoing you, pulling you close, taking the initiative to say, get over here. And then as you live in that reality more and more, then offer that to others around you. And notice how the verse ends, in order to bring praise to God. Wow, this is Christian spirituality when it's really focused on Jesus. We bring our praise to God and our worship to God by pulling other people close, by practically tending to their needs, by caring for others around us. I think Adam was right. The world needs more Jesus. Believers and non-believers should be able to agree about that. Well, I want to encourage you in your time together, whether you're going through the End of Religion Study Companion alone or talking with others. Either way, I hope you are able to turn it into a relational experience and turn monologue into dialogue. And along those lines, I'd love to be a part of that. If you have any questions for me, pull me into the discussion. I realize that if I stir the pot, I should stick around to clean up the mess. And while I'm sure that you've got other people in your life, or I trust that you do, that you can ask questions of and get into good discussion with, if there's still some loose ends that aren't addressed in the book, then I hope you get in touch with me. With a name like Bruxy Cavey, I've got to be easy to find on social media, right? So hopefully you'll get in touch with any questions, and I live for this stuff. I would love to be involved. All right, I wish you all the best. Grace and peace.